Hello once again to each and every single one of you. Obviously a nice warm welcome and thank you for joining me. This is Poison Fog Gaming and we are back, episode 5 of our hard mode playthrough, and this is the city of Krateris, named so because it's in the middle of a humongous crater, but zoomed in enough that we don't really need to worry about that for the most part. And we have good news going ahead for the series. The good news is that we're now on episode 5. I am confident that our cash flow is fully up and running, and we are now able to, within each episode, take one larger project at a time, focus on that, and as a result, we don't need to dance about with our attention as we're building it, and we won't go out of money while we do that. So you can see down the bottom of the screen, cash flow is now healthy, and both to celebrate that and just because I think it's going to be slightly better content, we in this video are going to make a 5-star zoo from scratch. And if you want to just skip ahead to that, head to the sort of 4.5 to 5 minute range of the video, and we will make a start on our 5-star zoo. And once we start building that zoo, we will stay with that zoo until it is complete. In the meantime though, we are just finishing off the area of Hickory Heights. You'll see we did this in the last episode. We destroyed a couple of houses, but we have allowed ourselves the ability to expand. There is more residential zoning about to be put in, and we have a park that greatly follows the concepts of a walkable city. I mean, yeah, this is a town, but this park has so many different paths in and out of it. Most commutes through this town, you can imagine, will go via the park, and we like that. Of course, we're putting in fences to mimic real life and to mimic the fact that if people have children or pets, they want a little bit of protection from the outer roads. So we do always like to include some fences in our parks. It's actually one of the benefits of recording. Something I might not do just in a casual playthrough, but because I'm sticking this on YouTube, it does just provoke me into doing a little more detailing work, and of course the trees to expand the park. The thing about the trees is it just merges it all together and it makes it look like the footprint between the roads rather than just the plain square that particular asset covers. So it blends in nicely. And of course, just while we are doing a little bit of detailing, we'll add in more paths, more walkability, really strive towards this healthy population that are happy to walk rather than jump in their cars. And I'm sure we can all imagine that that area by the roundabout is not complete yet. But as said earlier, we're going to be focusing this episode on the zoo. It is, however, nice just to have a little bit of content to pop in there while I'm doing the intro and letting you guys know what the episode is going to be about. And of course, we have a little bit of time to watch the buildings grow in the new area, the newly built Hemlock Heights City Centre, or Town Centre, Town Park. And we're going to be moving on to our zoo. So, you'll also have noticed we built this little bus stop, and we did put our bus stops here for a reason. We teased something was coming into this area. I didn't tell you exactly what it was. It is going to be a zoo. The zoo is situated between two towns, and I did think about that. Some zoos are actually set right in the middle of a city. Something like Edinburgh Zoo is probably the closest one to me that leads an example like that. Other zoos are actually quite rural and have shuttle services to and from them. And that is the style of zoo that I'm going for more here. The Highland Zoo up by Aviemore is probably the closest one like that to me. Of course I am British. Another one, fairly prominent example, would be Blackpool Zoo. It's a little ways out of the city and you would get there either by bus or tram. So I don't think it's an unreasonable place to put a zoo. Equally though, the location of the zoo, you can see the topography that we are utilising here. It's challenging to get the large assets from the zoo into such bumpy ground. We rely heavily on the terrain tools. You'll see shortly, we use the slope tool a lot for the paths, coupled with the level terrain tool. This is the level terrain tool here. For those of you who aren't really aware how the level terrain tool works, you select it, you right click at the level you want the ground to flatten between, and you just hold and drag the cursor. And just as we put that path in here, we used the slope terrain tool, which is a godsend for the pathing network throughout the zoo. You right click on an area you want a path to lead to, you then left click on where you want the path to come from, and you hold and drag the mouse over where you want the path to run through, and it just smooths it all off, creates a lovely smooth curve, and that's exactly what we want. If you are going over even steeper ground, you might want to consider putting a big S-shape chicane in, much like you would see, for example, going up Mount Everest or something like that. We've also decided to put the birds up to the highest point. I don't know if that is realistic or not, but it just seemed logical. The birds go to the sky, and the other land animals kind of stay lower down. Here is that slope tool coming in again. So you can see we have clicked up by the aviary. We have then clicked down at the path level. We've dragged between them, and we've smoothed out that whole ridge. And here comes the path. If it needs a little bit of a wiggle to get up, fair enough, but I believe that is realistic. I believe that's climbable. I believe you could also get a wheelchair up there, for example, children, the elderly, the able-bodied, etc. And you'll see now that we've got to the top of the hill, that might be a fair trek for some people. So we have some more refreshments and facilities, or as you might want to call it in more common terms, a loo and a cafe. Now, being this is one of the highest points, we've added some outdoor seating as well, because who would not want to sit up here at one of the highest points and look down over the rest of the zoo? Quite literally the bird's eye view, considering it is right next door to our birds. And yes, I understand a lot of birds will live in the tree canopy and whatever else. I may be completely wrong for putting the aviary up here. I don't even know if it's called an aviary in every country. The bird cage. Bird Exhibit A. So looking at further expansion now, we need a path network. I'm a fan of circular paths, I must admit, which is what I'm putting in here. You want people to navigate around the zoo, I think, in sort of circular manners, rather than it being linear. It gives people choice, spreads people out, disperses the crowd, etc. One other tactic we've used here, and I imagine other entertainment businesses use very, very similar tactics, and that is keep your exhibits fairly far away from each other. You can think about the same of a theme park. If you put the rides and the worlds farther away and lots of paths and scenery in between, it makes the whole area seem much bigger and grander than it actually is. So right now we've only got 3 exhibits, which isn't that much, and if we put that in a teeny tiny little footprint, that would be shit. You know, you would come away thinking that zoo is crap. 15 minutes, you've seen everything. But oh no, we have a fairly long, windy path up a mountain, a woodland trail hypothetically. You're not going to be able to see all of that in 15 minutes. You're going to have to walk between each part. It makes it seem, like I say, much bigger in scale. It takes longer to do, it's more of an outing. Even though there isn't actually much more substance there, if we're being perfectly honest. So theme parks will do that as well, where they can expand, just as zoos will. As mentioned before, there's 2 types of zoo. You've got the sort of rural zoo, which can expand as much as they want because they've got plenty land around about them. Or you have the city zoo, the urban zoo, whereby the area around that zoo is already built up and, well, you can't really demolish all those buildings just to expand your zoo. Those are the zoos that seem to have the exhibits really close together. But our rural zoo, no such thing. You'll have seen the park info view that I just popped up there as well. Really odd. I popped some teaser photos of this on a Facebook group and someone asked me, what is a 5-star zoo? So I just left that in there to remind me to talk about that. Don't want to insult the intelligence of those of you who do find this obvious, but every time you build a park area, you have some counters, and those counters are the number of visitors you get. It's so many out of so many, and you have an attraction level as well, and you get more attractive parks, or zoos in this case, by adding in more exhibits, more buildings, more assets. So that's how we just work up towards our 5-star zoo. We are currently level 1. Little cinematic here of 2 entrances. Now the 2 entrances are an interesting talking point, I think. Here we are, level 2. So yeah, why have I put in 2 entrances to this zoo? And the answer is both based on real life as well as based on practicality and just a simulation. The real life explanation is I was thinking about other zoos and a lot of them have a staff entrance. So I wanted to sort of emulate that. And of course, having that bridge over the highway, that is a hell of an advertisement. If that was in real life, you would imagine signs much bigger than the game actually comes with. They would be screaming, we've got a zoo here, you're going under it, it's free real estate. So that kind of made sense as well. The slightly cheaper answer is, from a game perspective, you want cross traffic coming from the one regional area to the other. Slightly less of a real life situation, but I'm happy for the locals to, you know, quote unquote, have a little season path and use the zoo as a cut through, because again, it makes the zoo seem busier. So why not? It's not a realistic option, as I've mentioned, but in the game, that's money. People coming from A to B through the zoo, that's money. So a few different reasons there, some real life and realistic, others not. But it is hard mode, we are still in the infancy, and it's what I've done. If you don't like it, try and imagine it as a simulated staff entrance to get your employees into the zoo from the other end. And of course that is realistic. The zoo I know most about is Edinburgh Zoo, and they have an entrance up the hill, away from the large arterial road, which is the public entrance. They all park their cars there, and there's a wee gate that they can get through. So, with level 2 comes the unlocking of more assets, more exhibits, and you can see here we have problems with the terrain. It's not looking overly attractive as it is left there just now. We will neaten it up and we will hide some things with trees, which I must say is the easiest, cheatiest way to clear something up. And here we have our levels again. You can see we're just gaining the number of visitors, the attractiveness level, skipping over my words, is already way above what we need, and woohoo, fire. We're not going to deal with it. The city will deal with it itself. But it's just a nice reminder that the city is still running while we are making this project. Now, of course, not all zoos have a large body of water outside them, so we have the luxury of that. It makes the zoo look much more pretty, and also we get to use our Sea Life Centre exhibit. I know it's not a sea, but I'm sure they've got something in there worth a wee look, worth a wander. And I guess this is where the video starts to get a little bit repetitive. Every time we pop in these new exhibits, it is a case of terraforming the land, making sure the paths can go in both within loops and both in smooth areas, and it's the same tools that we use over and over again to do this. Once again, if you want to visit the flamingos or the Sea Life Centre, we want it to be a loop. We want you to be able to do basically a circuit, see both these exhibits as you go and see something else, possibly the insect house, possibly the birds. The insect house I popped up next to the junction. As you can see, that's the building up there to the north, the creamy coloured one. I figured out of all the exhibits that could be situated next to noise, that was the right one. So we have done that. The only mod I have used for this zoo is the tree brush. You'll have seen the tree brush already being used. The zoo essentially gets the tree brush all the way around the outside. I kind of make just that tree brush the border of the zoo. We don't fence all the way around it, only very small parts. But that is kind of this zoo's theme, I think, and I might think about editing that tree brush for other parts of the city to try and make them look different and unique. The little plaza here on the left, that's actually a level 1 plaza. We just didn't find a suitable spot to put it in. And of course, more cafe, more restrooms, more signage, and we're coming up, I believe, to a cinematic of what we've done so far. So I will potentially shut up during that. So as we can see here, we have our entrance number 1/2, nice big over the highway bridge, lots of pedestrian activity. Surely that in itself is one of the biggest advertisements for this zoo you can get. And bypassing now our elephant enclosure, cafe looking over the water, plaza, lots and lots and lots of pedestrians using the pathway, absolutely none of them heading to the elephants. But there the elephants are. The enclosure itself doesn't seem to need any extra decor, it's quite well contained as it is. Trees potentially around the back still to come. Nice little bridge as well, something a little different, avoids the path dipping into the terrain we like. And the flamingos, the water did seem like the perfect place. If I'm not mistaken, flamingos have wings. I'm not sure that would keep a flamingo in. Do flamingos fly? Anyway, lots of people on the path, none of them looking at the flamingos. And the pièce de résistance of the park, making use of the loch. Oh, I've just realised that bottom pier's floating. I've also just realised loch is a very, very Scottish word. I guess it's just a lake to absolutely everyone else. And here we draw back for our big sweeping drone shot. The alternative entrance / main entrance you can see there. You can see where the zoo is situated between both little commuter towns. Two commuter towns that don't actually have anywhere to commute to apart from each other. So that's one path. I guess that's the river path or the lake path. Those pylons do kind of annoy me, but short of putting in needless assets, pylons are the only solution we have. Souvenir shop and toilets on the way in. Let's take a different path this time. This is right the way to the very first exhibit that we built in the park. What do we have here? We have some form of deer or moose. I'm not sure exactly what they are. I think it's moose. I think those paths are just about acceptable. And here we have a crocodile terrorizing the buffalo. Absolutely no one is coming up to see the buffalo. So really what this zoo is a bypass. It's a bypass where no one comes to see the animals apart from crocodiles who come to terrorize them. Can't for the earth of me remember what they are, but more terrorizing via crocodile. And a nice big sweeping shot of the top of the mountain. Hill. Good views over the water. Try not to look behind you, it's a highway and it's god awful. No one wants to be seeing that. These birds are obviously much more capable of flight than the flamingos. And the only building that seemed properly suitable to stick next to the noisy motorway, the insect house. So while that cinematic has been playing and time has progressed, we are now on to level 4, which essentially means we get a couple more assets. Can't remember what the assets are. I think this one is potentially giraffes. With the tall overhanging walkway, which we can see the giraffes clearly from. And I feel I did fall into a little bit of a grid, so what's one of the best ways to cure a grid? Well, it's a random diagonal path. Like in the middle of nowhere for some reason. That seems to be how we break a grid. So yeah, there seems to be two parallel roads following the waterfront, which I agree with. We should follow the waterfront and use the topography, but we also want to break it up and be interesting as well. Here I've taken inspiration from the built-in raised pathway from the giraffes, and I thought, well, why the hell not raise up the path for the elephants as well? Elephants are big. Oh yes, I did use a little cheeky bit of the move it tool as well, but I'm sure it could have been deleted and done vanilla as well. So if you're watching alongside on console, I'm sure, yeah, you can do that. Sure you can. And of course, back to the terrain tools. That still looks awfully steep to me. That monkey pallet, I think I moved the monkey palace if I'm completely honest with you all. Yes, the monkey palace does not stay there. I do not like how that earth is raised up. And yes, this bridge that goes over the highway, it does get completely renovated. I believe that is what I'm about to do now. Also, considering the huge influx of people using the path network, we did pop in another souvenir shop and another restroom area, so that does now resemble a entrance and an exit rather than just a staff area, because it evolved. The zoo evolved to not be a zoo. The zoo evolved to be a walkway to the other town. As you saw from the cinematics, absolutely no one was coming to see the animals. There's a souvenir shop. You can get a fridge magnet that says I transferred from one town to the other through the magnificent zoo. Speaking of the magnificent zoo, please do hop in the comments, suggest names that the zoo could take on. It'd be interesting to see if there's any good humorous names. I'm sure you lot are much more witty than myself. And I think this area now is starting to serve like a nice little welcome if you are coming in from the other side of the highway. And of course you'll notice throughout this whole build the pipes have been placed logically underneath the paths best as possible. I did mention earlier that we were going to use the trees as a border. That really is some of the only fencing I've put in. Fencing, this technically is outside the zoo. It's a small nod to try and make a car park. I do try and keep the series vanilla-ish so that console players and whatnot can, follow along and I don't alienate anybody too much. Vanilla car parks, it's a slight nod to that, and that's literally all it is. Instead we've got the buses, the transfers, that brings the activity to the area. That's what I like. And of course, a little bit of signage to try and sell it. Food courts and decor, we're going to get a lot of that now. This is all very heavily edited. I really wish there was bigger signs in the game. Yes, I know there's a mod, procedural objects, that can make really big signs. But like I said about too many mods, I don't really want to alienate viewers. So I'm trying to limit the assets as much as possible, and even though I use some, I think it's nice that some people can still use some of the tips and tricks that they see on YouTube from various sources and dabble with them in their own cities. But I would much prefer to see some really big signs that we can hang off of the overhangs and bring into the entrance roads, because I don't believe the signs in the games do it justice. And then also things like your directional signs, they're very small. You barely see them even in a cinematic unless we really zoom in. And as much as I'll admit the game is gorgeous zoomed in, I don't think it was built for zooming in mind. Thus the fact we need mods to zoom in to certain levels. Again, I wanted to pop a slightly different orientation of road in there. I didn't want this to become a grid. So that new enclosure, slightly jaunty angle. And that is a horrific path that we're not going to keep. Oh, a little bit of move it there again. I do apologise. But of course, I'm getting to the end of my zoo build, and obviously when you have that ease of life mod there, it's very tempting just to use. Softening gland, of course, necessary steps. And I believe that is almost our zoo complete. If not that, I think it is complete. Just a few more pipes. And here you can see very much the end results of the new areas we've just placed in. So enjoy looking at that. I might find some extra details that have been cut out, signs and like, a few more trees. But considering how close this is to the end of the video, it is time for the bit that I think everybody hates, both the content creators and you guys watching at home. Please like, subscribe, comment, all of that. We ask because it makes a difference to the channel. If you want to see more builds, just a few seconds of your own time can make a big difference to us, be it statistically or motivationally. It really does make a big difference. And just to finish off the video, we are popping in extra trees with our tree brush. Feel free to do it individually if you want, but that is not me. And that is our zoo, our 5-star view. Pop name suggestions in the comments. And of course, I cannot wait to see you on the next episode. Ta-ra!